We created this video to help calm your anxious mind through a peaceful voice, serene music, and beautiful landscapes. If you prefer quiet time without narration, jump to the end. What if I told you that every anxious moment you've ever experienced is actually your mind at war with itself? That the racing thoughts, the sleepless nights, the constant worry, it's all happening because two powerful forces inside you are locked in an endless battle? Right now, as you're watching this, your unconscious mind is processing thousands of desires, fears, and impulses that you're not even aware of. Sigmund Freud discovered that anxiety isn't just stress or worry. It's the psychological battlefield where your deepest desires clash with your moral conscience. This internal war is happening whether you realize it or not, and it's shaping every decision you make. Most people think anxiety is something that just happens to them, like catching a cold. But Freud revealed a shocking truth. Your anxiety is actually your mind's way of protecting you from desires so powerful and forbidden that acknowledging them would shatter your sense of who you are. The question isn't whether you have these hidden desires, it's whether you're brave enough to understand what they're trying to tell you. Think about the last time you felt that knot in your stomach before making an important decision. Maybe it was asking someone out, confronting your boss, or even something as simple as posting a photo on social media. That physical sensation wasn't just nervousness, it was your psyche, literally fighting itself. One part of you desperately wanted to act on your desire, while another part screamed that it was dangerous, inappropriate, or would lead to rejection. This isn't weakness or overthinking, this is the human condition. Every single person walking this planet carries within them a collection of wants, needs, and urges that society has taught them to suppress. Your anxiety spikes precisely when these buried desires try to surface, creating an eternal tug-of-war that manifests as sweaty palms, racing thoughts, and that overwhelming feeling that something terrible is about to happen. The tragedy is that most people spend their entire lives medicating or avoiding this discomfort, never realizing they're silencing the very voice that could set them free. Freud's revolutionary insight was that your mind operates on three distinct levels, each with its own agenda. The id, your primal instinctual self, wants immediate gratification of every desire, no matter how socially unacceptable. It's the part of you that wants to quit your job, tell people exactly what you think, or pursue that forbidden attraction. The id doesn't care about consequences, it only knows what it wants, and it wants it now. Then there's the superego, your internalized moral police officer. This is the voice that tells you to be good, follow the rules, and never step out of line. It's formed by years of parental guidance, social conditioning, and cultural expectations. The superego looks at the id's desires with horror and immediately tries to shut them down with guilt, shame, and fear. It's the reason you feel bad about wanting things that might be perfectly natural. Caught between these two forces is your ego, your conscious, rational mind trying to navigate reality. The ego is like a diplomat attempting to negotiate a peace treaty between two warring nations that speak completely different languages. When the id's desires become too strong and the superego's restrictions too rigid, the ego becomes overwhelmed. This overwhelm is what we experience as anxiety. The fascinating part is that this battle isn't happening in some abstract psychological space. It's happening in your body, in real time. Every anxious moment is your nervous system responding to this internal conflict. Your heart races because your id is pushing for action while your superego is slamming on the brakes. The result is a psychological traffic jam that manifests as physical and emotional distress. Freud didn't just theorize about this, he spent decades analyzing thousands of patients, uncovering patterns that revealed the hidden architecture of the human psyche. His work with hysteria patients in the late 1800s showed him that physical symptoms often had psychological roots. When people couldn't express their true desires, their bodies found other ways to communicate the conflict. This wasn't speculation, it was empirical observation of how repressed desires manifest as anxiety disorders. What makes Freud's framework so powerful is that it's been validated by over a century of psychological research. Modern neuroscience has actually located these competing systems in the brain: the limbic system driving our desires, the prefrontal cortex enforcing social rules, and the anterior cingulate cortex trying to mediate between them. When these neural networks are in conflict, brain scans literally show increased activity in areas associated with stress and anxiety. Carl Jung, Freud's most famous protege, expanded on this concept by introducing the idea of the shadow, the collection of desires and impulses we've rejected about ourselves. Jung observed that anxiety often intensifies when we're forced to confront aspects of our personality that we've spent years denying. The more energy we spend pushing down these shadow elements, the more they push back, creating the psychological pressure we experience as chronic anxiety. Even contemporary therapists like Irvin Yalom and Rollo May have built upon Freudian principles, showing that existential anxiety, the fear of death, meaninglessness, and isolation, often stems from our inability to accept our authentic desires. When we live according to others' expectations rather than our own truth, we create an internal split that generates persistent unease. This isn't just theory, it's the foundation of modern psychodynamic therapy, which has helped millions of people understand the root causes of their anxiety. Here's what most people don't realize: the desires causing your anxiety aren't necessarily what you think they are. That overwhelming fear you feel before public speaking, it might not be about embarrassment at all. It could be your unconscious terror of being truly seen and accepted for who you are. The anxiety you experience in relationships might not be about rejection, but about your deep, forbidden desire to completely surrender control to another person. Freud discovered that our most anxiety-provoking situations often contain hidden wishes that we're not consciously aware of. The person who has panic attacks on airplanes might unconsciously desire the ultimate escape from responsibility. The individual who feels anxious about success might be harboring a secret wish to rebel against their parents' expectations. These aren't conscious thoughts. They're buried so deep that even admitting them feels dangerous. What's even more intriguing is that Freud found our anxiety often intensifies around our greatest gifts and potentials. The artist who feels paralyzed before creating, the leader who panics before making decisions, the lover who withdraws before intimacy. They're not afraid of failure. They're terrified of their own power. Their unconscious mind knows that fully expressing their authentic self would require them to abandon the safe, small version of themselves they've constructed. The most shocking discovery? Sometimes our anxiety is protecting us from desires that would actually liberate us. That career change you're anxious about, that relationship you're afraid to pursue, that creative project that keeps you up at night, your anxiety might be the last line of defense against a life so authentic and fulfilling that it would require you to completely reimagine who you are. The question becomes, what is your anxiety really protecting you from? When you understand that anxiety is a battle between your mind and desires, everything changes. Suddenly, that crushing feeling in your chest isn't a sign that something's wrong with you. It's intelligence. Your psyche is trying to communicate something vital about what you truly want versus what you think you should want. This realization alone can transform your relationship with anxiety from enemy to messenger, from pathology to pathway. The psychological impact of recognizing this internal war is profound. Instead of medicating or avoiding anxious feelings, you begin to decode them. That Sunday night dread about work becomes a signal that your soul is crying out for more meaningful labor. The social anxiety at parties reveals your deep desire for authentic connection rather than superficial networking. Your anxiety becomes a compass pointing toward your most suppressed truths. But here's where it gets psychologically dangerous. Once you start seeing anxiety as repressed desire, you can't unsee it. You begin to notice how much of your life has been constructed around avoiding your own wants. The safe job that drains your spirit, the relationship that lacks passion, the dreams you've labeled unrealistic, they all become visible as compromises you've made to keep your deeper desires buried and your anxiety manageable. The most profound psychological shift happens when you realize that your anxiety isn't random, it's strategic. Your unconscious mind creates anxiety precisely around the areas where your authentic self is trying to emerge. The intensity of your anxiety is directly proportional to the importance of what you're avoiding. This means your greatest fears are actually roadmaps to your greatest fulfillment. But walking that path requires confronting the very desires that your psyche has spent years trying to protect you from. So the next time anxiety grips you, remember this: you're not broken, you're not weak, and you're not overreacting. You're experiencing the natural consequence of being a complex human being with desires that don't always align with social expectations. Your anxiety is proof that you have an inner life rich enough to create conflict, deep enough to generate fear, and powerful enough to demand your attention. The question isn't how to eliminate this battle, it's how to become conscious enough to choose which side wins. Freud showed us that the goal isn't to silence our desires or eliminate our moral compass, it's to develop an ego strong enough to mediate between them consciously. This means learning to acknowledge what you truly want without immediately judging it, and understanding your moral boundaries without letting them become a prison. The anxiety will always be there when these forces clash, but now you know what it really means. Your anxiety isn't your enemy. It's your psyche's way of telling you that something authentic is trying to emerge. The intensity of your discomfort is directly proportional to the importance of what wants to be born through you. So instead of running from that anxious feeling, lean into it. Ask it what it's protecting you from, what it's trying to tell you, and what desires it's guarding. Because on the other side of that anxiety isn't just relief, it's the life you were actually meant to live.